Hey everyone, my name's Joe, and in this video, we're going to talk about some of the best engineering degrees and assess them for their career potential, typical salaries, work-life balance, and other important qualities. Let's get into it. So as a disclaimer regarding the degrees and the careers, a lot of what you are going to get from your career is going to depend on things that you did in undergrad to differentiate yourself. So clubs, research projects, internships that show your practical experience, the way that you solve problems in engineering tasks. That's gonna, I would say that would arguably affect your career even more than which degree you get. There really isn't one degree that is a single silver bullet to get you into a good career and get you through your career with it. Because what the employers want to see is, can you solve practical problems? Are you a critical thinker into everyday problems rather than just how well do you do with academic studies and with solving equations that you did in your classes and such? Because if you only focus on classwork and you don't have other ways of standing out, or worse, you just partied the whole time, then you can expect a lot more difficulty in getting that entry-level position. So be sure to remember, the degree by itself isn't going to get you anywhere nowadays. It may have been different back in the day when not as many people got engineering degrees, but now you do have to differentiate yourself from the competition in order to get that one entry-level position to get you moving on through your career path. So let's start by talking about the highest paying engineering degrees. And this is data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics across all skill levels, so not specifically entry level, but all skill levels. The single highest paying engineering degree, and I'm pretty sure actually the single highest paying degree period, is petroleum engineering at a whopping $128,000 a year at the mid-level. And then chemical engineering is also pretty high up there. Aerospace engineering is also pretty high up there. So those are toward the top in terms of earning potential spectrum. But on the flip side, there are downsides to these degrees. So petroleum engineering, it's very niche, basically a more niche version of chemical engineering where all the jobs are in very specific areas where they extract oil or process oil. You may be out in the middle of an oil rig and doing odd hours that don't contribute to your social life and such. And so that's definitely something to consider. Is that something that you don't really care about, but the number 128,000 down the road just really gets you thinking, yeah, that's what I need to do. Okay, that's great. Just keep these things in mind for sure. And for chemical engineering, which, like I mentioned, basically a more broad version of petroleum engineering, and learning in classes about all these chemical concepts and different factors for how manufacturing processes could work, because most of the jobs are in manufacturing plants, and from what I hear from people who graduated in chemical engineering, you're not really using most chemical engineering concepts. That kind of stuff is a lot more in the research and academia areas if you go further on for a master's and a PhD rather than going into industry, because the way industry is, they tend to have their manufacturing processes very set in stone. They were already figured out and determined at a high level. So be sure to do your research on this, because it's possible that whoever was deciding these at the high level or managing them at the high level, they're the ones who you could work your way up to. But corporations and manufacturing plants these days, they already have their processes set in stone. And chemical engineering is one of the more difficult degrees, so keep that in mind as well. And aerospace engineering is quite niche as well. It's very specific, and because mechanical engineering grads can pretty much do the same jobs, because aerospace engineering is, I would say, just a more specific version of mechanical engineering. Because in my mechanical engineering curriculum when I was an undergrad, the first 2 years were identical to each other between the 2 degrees. Then after that second year, you start branching off where the aerospace guys start doing some classes that are a bit more specific to aircrafts and helicopters and space vehicles, etc. But mechanical engineering grads can easily take those same electives, or even if they don't take the same electives, the aerospace companies will still hire them, plus mechanical can do other things. So that's just something to keep in mind. You are definitely making your prospects a bit more narrow in aerospace versus in mechanical. And the aerospace jobs are also in somewhat specific geographic areas, although not nearly as much as petroleum. But because aerospace jobs are in Colorado, Arizona, California, Florida. You might not find as much opportunity in just random places in the Midwest or random places in the East Coast. I do know there are some aerospace companies, or at least some companies that'll do like jet engines or compressors in random small towns in Vermont or whatever, but for the most part, the opportunities are going to be in some rather specific large city areas. And then finally, to keep in mind about aerospace engineering, you, for the most part, in a lot of companies, if they're defense contractors or work on certain government projects, then it's going to be at least a significant disadvantage if you're not a U.S. citizen or if you have some background check issues. So be sure to do your research on that and keep your own background in mind. And so let's talk about some degrees that are a bit more versatile. So mechanical engineering is pretty versatile, which I already kind of talked about that. 'Cause mechanical engineering, there are some more mechanical specific things like working on automobiles or working on probably industrial machinery. And mechanical engineers can also work on the aerospace industry like I talked about. And there are a lot of mechanical engineers that'll go into construction or into the medical device industry, because mechanical engineering being a bit more broad, talking about structural analysis, structural design, thermodynamics, stuff that's needed in all these other industries. So that's why mechanical is pretty versatile, and you are going to have more options in the early phases of your career. Electrical engineering is a somewhat similar situation where a lot of different areas still have electrical systems. They still have circuits and wiring. Medical devices usually do. Aerospace has a lot of electrical systems in addition to communications, avionics systems, and everything. And I'm pretty sure even construction, you have to be dealing with electrical design for electrical power systems in buildings. So yeah, electrical is pretty versatile as well. Civil engineering, and civil is going to be a lot more narrowed down to things like construction and roads and the built environment. So it is a bit more niche in terms of which industries you go to. However, civil engineering has maybe even the highest number of jobs, because construction is everywhere nowadays. There's constantly things in our infrastructure being updated, just things being flat out built as cities expand. And so here are some considerations about some of those degrees. About mechanical engineering, most industries will at least consider you, including aerospace, construction, medical. Like I mentioned earlier, you at least know the basics of a good variety of things. And the other thing is that these industries are not going to necessarily pay you less just because of your degree. They're going to pay you the market rate for the skill set that's needed for that position. So in my experience, even the entry-level positions stay the same across degrees in terms of what the company's going to pay you. But especially once you're 2 years in, 5 years in, 10 years in, if you have the experience from those past 2, 5, or 10 years to do the job, then you're not really any different than someone who has a biomedical degree or an aerospace degree. And very similar situation for electrical engineering, where most industries that need electrical equipment and electrical circuits are going to at least consider you. And I'd say, for instance, even the aerospace industry, they might even want some people with specifically electrical engineering degrees, because I think the aerospace jobs in electrical that I've seen, aerospace degrees probably don't have the in-depth knowledge of circuitry and power systems and comm systems to really work on their aircraft and other flying vehicles. So yeah, electrical is pretty solid for a variety of things. Civil engineering has a high number of jobs, like we talked about, construction and infrastructure projects in cities, on roads. So yeah, take a look at any job board. You're going to see a lot of these structural engineers or project engineers in construction projects, and probably goes without saying, but higher location versatility, because if you think about it, like, construction really doesn't confine itself to certain geographical areas. I mean, you might have big offices that are in big cities, but the construction projects themselves are going to be in different areas, so you're not as confined to wherever the company has their office in this area or whatever, like is the case with aerospace, or more so with petroleum and such. And so let's talk about a little bit of the flip side of these other degrees. Mechanical engineering, so yeah, it is more versatile. You do have more options of industries to work in at the entry level because it is more broad. It is also one of the more saturated ones at the entry level, just because most people are doing it. Most people see like that this is the most practical one, that's the most versatile, so there's going to be more competition for those entry level degrees. Electrical engineering may be also a little bit of the same thing, and for most people it is going to be more difficult than mechanical, because electrical is a little bit more abstract. You don't visualize load paths or thermodynamics quite as easily as in electrical systems as you would in some of those things. And electrical engineering, I have met a good number of people who use this degree to go into like software and tech and such. And in fact, I also met people like in mechanical for those as well. And that's a lot more uncertain now, with AI taking over a lot more of the entry-level jobs in that industry, and with tech being a lot more uncertain these days. So just keep in mind that what worked for electrical engineering a few years ago is not necessarily going to be the same recently. So be sure to do your research on what your current paths are going to be for electrical engineering, and what they would be, even more ideally, like 4 years from now, rather than today. Civil engineering, and it's sometimes a little bit lower paying. You could easily fix that and get ahead by getting your professional engineering license, getting on that path, making yourself more valuable. And sometimes some of the tasks can be more boring and tedious, and dealing with more regulations, because the built environment's going to have a lot more government regulations or local regulations on how things are supposed to be done. So in a lot of cases, there may be less room for creativity. And this is also something to do your research on, because talk to different civil engineers or structural engineers and think about what they like about their job and what they kind of wish was different, because that is the thing about college, is it's going to teach you a lot more of the high level, how problems are solved and how to get certain margins to pass and stuff. And a lot of times in industry you are confined by regulations. Now let's talk a little bit about tech-related degrees. So computer science and software engineering, we saw how that was very hot for a long time, and there was a massive shortage. Employers were always hiring, and that's seemingly not been the case as much lately. I mean, the software engineers who are like 10 years in are seeming to still do fine as far as I know. But especially the lower levels, slowing economy and AI, yeah, things seem to be slowing down there. So I would say at the very least, be careful with this one. Although we don't know if it seems like this AI bubble is going to burst and things aren't seeming to go as well with it as they thought, and they're going to start saying, oh, we need all the software engineers back, and now tech is super hot again. Like, it's hard to predict the future, but it's worth diving deeper into this to see how things possibly could be in the future. But that is where AI, get used to using it, especially for things like coding projects, just in any engineering degree, and using it to really learn your stuff well. That's going to put you at a huge advantage in any field right now. In cybersecurity, that's another one where BLS has been showing very high rates of growth in the next 10 years. And the entry level is more saturated because we're seeing this phenomenon of people who need jobs, people who need to break into careers, seeing, oh, okay, well, this is a field that's highly needed and is paying well and has remote work opportunities, so let's try to jump on this. That's where like a lot of people end up at the entry level, and the entry level gets saturated, even though we see that the mid-level and the 10 years, 20 years experience is very hot because they really need people in this, but they need the kinds of people who really know what they're doing. So yeah, this definitely could potentially be worth it with the right research and planning, because what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Get your practical experience, get into your entry-level degree that you need to get into, and then find something ideally that's going to be needed at the mid and high level so that you can maintain your job security, maintain your salary, and go forth and ride off into the sunset. And so just important considerations in general. So work smarter, not just harder. So the person who differentiates themselves is going to be the one to get the positions. As we've been discussing, I repeat, the degree itself is not a differentiator. Get involved, engineering clubs, research, especially internships. And historically, we've seen that employers, they like to hire people with engineering degrees, even for unrelated roles. So that's where like getting an engineering degree, even a mechanical degree or probably any degree, the employers just in any other field that's unrelated are going to see these are smart, hardworking people and can solve practical problems. So an engineering degree, even if you don't use it for engineering, could certainly help you with other careers later on. And in general, consider choosing a field, even if you know what field you're going into, and if you're going to choose now, choose something that's going to be more difficult to outsource or automate. That's another way to continue to maintain your job security and your skill set being still in demand and everything. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me with any questions you have, and go forth and conquer.